Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Aligned Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Torrie Thompson, and I am so excited for this week's episode because it is on one of my all-time favorite topics. And the reason it's one of my favorite topics is because it's such a missed thing, and it was such a big player in my own personal health journey and the reason I was able to get well. And so, it's become a passion of mine to educate people on this topic. And so this week we are going to dive into mold mycotoxins. And before you go, nope, not me. I've never been exposed to mold, never lived in a water damaged house. I want you to listen to this episode because we are going to get into where it comes from, the common myths, and I will tell you one of them is that you've never been exposed because you've never lived in a house with water damage, and what symptoms to look for, because often I believe this is probably one of the most common root causes that is leading to people's symptoms, such as thyroid imbalances, autoimmune conditions, hormone imbalances, weight gain, gut issues, candida, SIBO, you name it, these mold mycotoxins can do it. So we're going to dive in and really get into what they are, where they come from, and what you can do about it. So the reason that this is such a passionate piece for me is that in my own healing journey, I had dealt with Lyme and knew I'd been dealing with Lyme disease, but I couldn't get over the last hump. I'd gotten a lot better. I got my inflammation down. My weight was better. I was at a better place, but I couldn't get that final stretch of the way. And anytime I was under high stress, anytime I got sick, then everything would come back. And so I knew that there was a missing piece. And it wasn't until years later that I started looking into mold mycotoxins. These tests finally became available. And I thought, we had a flood in our home when I was younger. Maybe there's some mold. And my mycotoxins were off the charts. So through detoxing mold, I was really able to get that last final stretch of the way, get my immune system stronger, get the last bits of inflammation off, balance my hormones. That was really the final piece of the puzzle. And I see this so often. Someone comes to me and they've done years of candida work or hormone work or managing their thyroid with supplements or trying to lose weight, and they just can't get there, right? They've tried everything else. They've done parasite cleanses. They've done heavy metal chelation. They've done healing their leaky gut, but they're still not better. And often these mold mycotoxins are what is missed. So I love looking at them, looking for them, just because they can be the final piece of the puzzle that really sets someone up for success. With mold mycotoxins, people often will call it mold, right? And so you'll hear us say, oh, I'm dealing with molds, but what is a mycotoxin? So in the world, there are two types of mold. We have environmental mold, and that is what you may see in the allergy report as the mold count is high. This is things like blue cheese, the mold on blue cheese, and there's thousands of types of environmental mold that don't harm us, right? They are just there, may give you seasonal allergies, itchy eyes, runny nose, that kind of stuff, but they don't necessarily harm us. Then what we are looking at is the category of toxic mold. And what makes toxic mold toxic is that it produces a toxin called the mycotoxin. And the mycotoxin is actually what harms most people, not mold itself. So these mold spores will create this toxic release called the mycotoxin, and that's what can get into our body and create these symptoms. So big picture, mycotoxins all are going to be slightly different in how they act. But as a whole, what they do is they're immunosuppressive. Mycotoxins turn the immune system down a little bit so that other things can overgrow. This may be candida. This may be bacteria, such as things like SIBO. This could be other fungi. It could be viruses that have been dormant in your body. So you might be someone that gets sick all the time or has these chronic flare-ups of things. They're highly inflammatory, so we see brain inflammation, gut inflammation, and often just a systemic inflammation. And then we often see that they're highly toxic to the liver, the kidneys. Those guys have to filter these toxins. And then a lot of them are classified as neurotoxins. They're very toxic to the brain. So when you're looking at these mycotoxins, that high toxicity, that inflammation, that lowered immune system is really what sets the stage to allow these other things to pop up, right? So that might look like now you've got candida or SIBO or chronic Epstein-Barr or now you're holding on to weight because your liver is overburdened, you're holding on to toxins, you can't lose weight, now your skin is affected because your liver is overburdened. So we start to get how these things affect the body, starts to create symptoms that manifest because of that. So these toxic mold, they come from two places: water damaged buildings, and that could be at any point in your life, right? So that's a roof leak, a bathtub overflow, a washing machine leak, a garbage disposal leak, some sort of water leak that gets left, and it only takes 24 hours for mold to start to grow. And then the other source would be food sources. And so the big foods that we associate with are going to be coffee, grains, and peanuts. Of course, there's B and C and D level foods that can contain these mycotoxins, but those are the most common foods that we see associated with mold mycotoxins. So when we're getting into water damaged molds versus food mold, some of the mycotoxins are exclusive to one or the other. So something like aflatoxin is going to be exclusive to a food mold, whereas something like varicarin, a type of black mold mycotoxin, is going to be associated with water damage. But then there's some that have overlap. So some of them can come from either source. This would be something like ochratoxin A. So if you do a mycotoxin test and you come back with one of those, you do have to explore both options, right? One, am I eating foods that can contain these mycotoxins? And two, is there a source of hidden water damage in my home? So before you tell me my home is brand new, I have an expensive home, I've never had any issues, I will tell you it's estimated that 1 out of every 2 houses in the United States have some sort of mold in them. 1 out of every 2, 50% of homes. And there's many reasons, right? We can't always see or smell these mycotoxins or this toxic mold. So people often associate that musty smell with mold, and that can absolutely be a sign of mold. But often it's behind walls, under flooring, behind cabinets, and there's no smell, there's no visual signs of it that would give someone the clues that there's water damage there. And nowadays, the way that we build homes, builders build year-round. They build through rain, through snow. Often things like lumber or drywall can get wet from sitting out, maybe the rain or snow. And then they put it in, they seal it up with drywall and insulation, and it creates the perfect recipe for mold. I actually have a friend of mine that just bought a brand new build, and under all of the flooring and behind basically half of the walls in the house was covered in black mold. Everybody got sick. It was a disaster, a brand new build, and they couldn't tell, right? Everything looked good to the eye, but they had no idea that this mold was in there. And the way they first figured it out was their infant got very, very sick. And so they started exploring that. But water damage doesn't discriminate against an expensive house versus an inexpensive house. Humid climates, yes, you have a higher risk because it's humid, but I've seen dry climates. I've seen homes in Colorado have water damage mold. It doesn't matter if your house is new, old, any of them can have it. And then the other part of this that's tricky is when you're in a home that maybe has some mold, once you leave, those mycotoxins often don't leave the body. Most people's bodies cannot actually detox those mycotoxins well. So the initial symptoms of mold exposure that are there, maybe runny nose, cough, sinus congestion, those often get better with leaving, but the mycotoxin load, those toxins sitting in your body from mold, those don't often go away. So how it can manifest is down the road, an autoimmune condition, inability to lose weight, thyroid getting lower and lower to hypothyroid or Hashimoto's, hormones getting lower and lower. And you can start to get it in these other ways, but people don't tie it back to mold. And it can be that house when you were a kid, or your college dorm, or some vacation home that you were in that had some sort of water damage. So it can be very, very tricky to hunt it down. But once you do, if you can make sure that it's not in your current house, then it's kind of like, okay, I picked it up somewhere else. I don't know where, but we'll just detox it out. So there's lots of different types of testing for mold in a home. So there's ERMI tests, there's dust tests, there's Petri dishes, there's all sorts of tests that you can do yourself that all have their own pros and cons to them. And then I think the gold standard is bringing out a mold inspection company, and they'll do thermal imaging, they'll take air samples indoor versus outdoor, and they can see the temperature changes behind walls. So if someone has the ability to do that before buying a home, it is an ideal way to make sure there's no mold in the house. Sometimes you don't always have the time to do that because of how quick that stuff moves. But if you have that ability, you want a mold inspector. You want someone that only looks for mold, not someone that looks for mold and also remediates mold, because they do have a conflict of interest in finding things. So you want a mold inspection company by itself, and then they can give you a report. And then from there, you can go meet with mold remediators if need be. But you can start with something like an immunolytics plate or an ERMI test, and those guys will give you a good idea of stuff floating around in the air in your home before calling out the big guns with a mold inspection company. In terms of food, like I mentioned, you can't necessarily see these mold spores or these mycotoxins. We absolutely cannot see. So you can't look at your coffee and go, oh, there's mold or there's not mold, or grains, oh, there's mold versus no mold. Can't see it, we can't smell it. And so for me, you can buy mold-free coffee. There's amazing mold-free coffee brands out there that test and certify against mold. We can also, I usually don't eat a lot of grains. And if I do, I rotate. I don't eat the same grains all the time. I don't buy in big batches. And then I absolutely don't touch peanuts. That is a food I don't touch. I will do other nuts as a alternative, but I don't touch peanuts because they are notorious for mold and all of these peanut products. So peanut butter and peanuts and things I personally don't touch. So how does mold affect the body? And mold is fascinating. These mycotoxins. How does it affect the body? So the symptoms are vast, right? So sometimes with immediate mold exposure, whether you're in a house or you went to a vacation house, you're going to notice sinus stuff, often coughing, chest tightness, sinus issues, whether sinus infection, sinus congestion, headaches, sneezing, coughing. And that can be that acute mold exposure. But once you have those mycotoxins in your body, then the symptoms can be very vague, right? So we've got brain fog, headaches, skin issues, so eczema, psoriasis. We can see weight gain. This is common in women in particular, weight gain with no changes or inability to lose weight. We can have thyroid imbalances, so hypothyroid or Hashimoto's. We can have gut issues, whether it's SIBO, candida, whether it's just bloating, poor digestion, indigestion, constipation, loose stools. Any of the gut symptoms can be low energy, poor sleep, muscle twitching. A really weird symptom can be static shocks. It can be frequent urination. The symptoms are vast and they can go on and on and on. So I always tell people, if something doesn't seem right, your labs are always coming back quote unquote normal, but you know something's wrong, run a mold mycotoxin test. They are a cost, but they are going to give you answers or, either yes or no as something to do. And that can give you a direction of what you need to do to start detoxing the body. So something else that people can deal with is histamine intolerances. So whether it's hives, itching, redness, bumps, that can be a sign that there is mold there. And if you're dealing with histamine issues, usually mold is the first place I like to look as a possible culprit of why you're having those histamine issues in the first place. So if you suspect mycotoxins, there is many different tests out there right now. So there is going to be blood testing, there is urine testing. So the blood tests, they actually look for IgG or immune reactions or responses to mycotoxins. So this will look like an IgG reaction to a mold mycotoxin. However, the problem with that is all that means is that you've been exposed to it. It doesn't mean that that's currently what is sitting in your body. So for me, the gold standard is going to be urine mycotoxin testing. And the reason we like this is we can see what is floating around in your body in terms of mycotoxins that shows currently what is there. So we can see, is it a food mold? Is it a water damage mold? What type of mycotoxins do you have sitting in your body and how much? So urine mycotoxin testing to me is the gold standard. I do not like the blood test because, again, all they're showing you is, have you ever been exposed? And maybe you have been exposed, but your body's cleared it. So we want to know what is currently sitting in your body. So then you can come up with a game plan of, where did this come from and what do I need to do about it? There's also another kind of roundabout way you can do it, and that's through organic acids testing or the oats test. And there is a fungal section on the organic acids that does pick up a few types of mold, especially aspergillus or penicillium. But I've seen it time and time again where someone will do an oat test and they will show no mycotoxin markers. There's 3 or so of them on that. And then we do a mycotoxin test and they're off the charts. It's just those ones aren't tested for in the oats. So again, not the best way to do it. The best way to do it is going to be doing a mold mycotoxin urine test. And you're going to want one of the companies that is doing the big panels, right? So there is Mosaic that's probably doing one of the smallest right now. They're only testing for 12, where you have something like Vibrant America and Real Time Labs that are testing for somewhere around 29. So the more that you can test for, the more data you can get. And it's, again, just a simple urine sample done at home, and then you send it back and it will tell you exactly what types of mycotoxins are in your body and how much. So if you come back with these mold mycotoxins, what do you do about it? What do you do? So because you're dealing with a toxin, right? You are not dealing with an active mold infection. And that is one of the biggest myths I see, is people say, I have mold growing inside my gut. 9 times out of 10, there's not an active mold infestation in your body. You are dealing with a toxin released by the mold. So the first thing that you have to do is, 1, prep your body. So what does that look like? We want to make sure that your liver, your kidneys, your gallbladder, your lymphatic system, that they can move these toxins out of the body, because those are one of the organs that take the biggest hit. Those guys have to filter all of these mycotoxins out, and so they can get overburdened, they can get very stressed out. So you're going to want to go in and prep those guys and make sure that the detox pathways are ready to go. And then what you're doing is you're going to bind the mycotoxins out, and you often are going to add in a bit of killing power to deal with the overgrowths that have happened because of these mycotoxins. So after you start binding the mycotoxins in, you're going to have some killing power in there, right? To kill maybe candida or bacterial overgrowth or parasites or whatever other microbes have now flared up because the immune system's turned down a little bit. And that binding and killing stage, depending on how many mycotoxins you're dealing with, takes time. Best case scenario, you're probably dealing with around 6 months of a mold detox, but it can be a year to 2 years for really, really high mold mycotoxin loads. So I always say it feels a little like Groundhog Day, right? You're just kind of binding and detoxing for a while, and it just takes time. These things are highly toxic, highly toxic for the liver and the kidneys and the body to detox, so the body does release it slowly. And if you go too fast and too aggressive, that's where you see things like these Herxheimer reactions, right? Maybe you feel like you have the flu or a cold or weight gain or brain fog or low energy. It tends to find our body's weakness, and we have these flare-up of symptoms. So slow and steady wins this race. You can add in other detox modalities that are going to help along the way, right? So this could be saunas, coffee enemas, red light, it can be exercise, it can be whatever modalities your body likes to help move these things out of the body. And then the last piece of the puzzle is healing the gut up and then going in and rebalancing what's been affected. So if it's someone's hormones have been affected, then you can go in and help rebalance that, or the thyroid or the metabolism, whatever has been affected, you can go in and make sure is balanced. But people often go, oh, I want to heal my leaky gut first. That is the last piece of the puzzle. And that is because if you have these mycotoxins in your gut, you've got lots of inflammation. Trying to heal a leaky gut with the toxins still there is like trying to heal road rash without cleaning it out. You're going to have rocks and dirt and all sorts of stuff inside of your gut or inside of that cut, and then if you heal it, it's not going to heal up very well, right? So you want to clean the cut out and then let it heal. Same thing with our guts. Clean out the toxins, the bugs, all of that, and then let it heal, and it's a really simple process. So mold mycotoxins, again, they can take anywhere from 6 months to several years to go away completely. And the other thing is to detox them, you really need to make sure that the exposure isn't still there. Not everyone has the ability to go move houses, right? Or do a huge remediation project. So if that's the case, you want to get air purifiers and run those, open your windows, get mold cleaning products, and do the best that you can with what you have. And then the food, guys, it's easy. We just pull those out of your diet. Come off of grains, come off of coffee unless it's mold free, and then come off of peanuts, and then maybe consider adding them back in once you've detoxed. But you do want to pull those food sources if that's the type of mycotoxins that you have in your body, so that you're not taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. All right, so I want to break down some myths around these mold mycotoxins. One we've already hit on, but it's so important, I want to hit it again, and that's that you are dealing with a mold colonization or mold infestation in your body, and that is not true. You're dealing with a toxin released by mold, not actually mold living inside of your gut. The second one is, if you find mold, use bleach. This is often, people do this in bathrooms, or they'll see mold growing somewhere and they'll just spray some bleach. Bleach works on non-porous surfaces, glass, a tile, right? Not grout, but a tile, subway tile, something that does not have little holes or any texture to it. Bleach can work for that. But for most people, it's in grout, on tile, on wood, on something that is porous. Mold does not get killed by bleach. You have to use something else. You can use things like, there's some non-toxic mold cleaning products. You can use distilled vinegar, but bleach does not work on porous surfaces. What it will do, take the top layer off, but what has grown down into the surface, the bleach will not be able to take off, and then it comes back, and it tends to come back stronger. So if you see mold in your bathroom, please refrain from using bleach or a bleach-based product. You want to use something else that is going to be able to actually get into a porous surface. And then other people will say that, oh, I just moved out of the house, we left, I don't need to do anything. And yes, that stops new exposure and new mycotoxins from coming in, but often it does not mean that the mycotoxins in your body have left, have been detoxed out. The body does not detox them well. So often moving is not enough. It will stop the acute symptoms, the respiratory symptoms, maybe sneezing, coughing, sinus infections, but it won't stop the mycotoxins that are sitting inside of your body. So this is just a very brief explanation of mold mycotoxins. You can go so deep into it about what they are and where they come from in each different type, because they're all unique. But this is our first kind of scratching the surface on these mold mycotoxins. I want to do a Q&A on this. And so if you have questions surrounding mold, please reach out to us and let us know so that we can add those to the list of the Q&A section. And then if you are someone and you're like, gosh, maybe I have been exposed to mold mycotoxins, you can order the test through our website. Or if you just want to know, hey, I've run a test, is this enough? Just reach out to us. We also have a free mold guide on our website, where mold comes from, what foods it's in, what products we recommend in terms of cleaning. So that is on our website as well, drtorriethompson.com. And thank you so much for listening. I love talking about mycotoxins, because I think they're so important as really understanding root causes of symptoms. And so thank you for listening, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please subscribe to the YouTube and our podcast and leave a review, and I will see you guys next week. Thanks so much.